The European Union is considering banning travelers from several countries as restrictions are eased. That ban could include travelers from the United States. An EU diplomat tells CNN the bloc wants to prohibit travel from countries where the virus is circulating most actively. It should be noted that whatever the EU decides, it's up to individual countries to enforce any ban. Richard Quest joins me now for more on this. So since there's free movement within Schengen, the big bloc, if each individual country has their own ban, how does that make sense since you can move freely between countries? Wouldn't that have to be a whole EU decision and impose a ban overall?
That's exactly the point, Hala. The Schengen free zone has broken down and has pretty much stopped in the late of March, when the EU itself put internal restrictions on movement within Schengen. And they're desperate to get Schengen back up and running again. And so that's why they have to agree a common list of countries that will be banned, and pretty much everyone has to go along with it. Because for the reason you've just said, first of all, let's say you're Greece and you want US tourists. Well, first of all, have you got direct flights from the United States? If you have, then your borders with the rest of the EU won't be able to come down in case those American tourists go elsewhere in the EU. And vice versa. If you're coming from a third country to, say, Frankfurt and then on to Greece. No, the EU wants to get Schengen back up and running, and the only way they can do it is unanimity amongst the members to all agree this list. And as you just said, Hala, the numbers tell their own story. Per 100,000 new cases in the EU, about 6. Per 100,000 population in the United States, well over 100.
Yeah, but I mean, presumably there's disagreement between countries that rely a lot on tourism, Greece, Spain, others, and countries that don't need tourists as much. Are they coming together? Are they going to come to some sort of common understanding about the U.S. in particular here?
I think that the haggling is going on now. In fact, I know it is. The haggling is going on now because they're desperate to provide a united front. And yes, look, I'm sure there are some countries, but it's not easy to see a way around it. If you were to let the US in, well, then you're going to have problems with Russia, because your definitional reason for letting the US in, Russia also meets that criteria. And so you start, once you shift this goalpost, and then you can arguably put in restrictions and quarantine requirements and PCR testing requirements from those specific countries, but you're now creating a minefield, and it starts to look a bit like the United Kingdom's households this, bubbles that, and all this. My feeling is that if they're going to let the United States in, they're going to have to cast a wider net. And at the moment, certainly, as the US seems to show no willingness to reduce that number, European leaders are gobsmacked, to be frank, that the leader of the United States is basically doing everything that the scientists and advisors tell you not to do.
Richard Quest, we'll see you later on Quest Means Business. Thanks. More than 9 million cases of coronavirus have been confirmed worldwide, with the Americas, including the U.S., becoming the most recent epicenter. Joining me now is David Nabarro. He was appointed as a special envoy for the World Health Organization to help with the coronavirus pandemic. Thank you, sir, for being with us. First, your take on what's going on in the United States. You have states like Arizona, Texas, and California that are at levels we haven't seen since April. What's your reaction to that?
Please take this virus really seriously. It hasn't gone away. It's very much there. Please respect what the public health folk are telling you to do. They're saying it for a reason. Please protect yourself and others, maintaining physical distance, wearing a mask when you're in public places, and if you're at all unwell, don't go out. It's really important that we recognize that this virus is dangerous, and we've all got to work to get on top of it. I really ask everybody in the US, and indeed everybody everywhere, to go on taking this virus seriously. please.
So do you think some of these states open too quickly, or in the case of the United Kingdom, for instance, with pubs and restaurants scheduled to open on July 4th, do you think all of this is a bit too soon?
I just want to make sure that as countries reduce their lockdowns and improve opportunities for people to move, that they're clear with their people on what are the basic steps that we all have to take to avoid the risk of infection, and that they've got strong defences in every community so that if outbreaks do build up, they are dealt with quickly and efficiently. It really is important that the messages are clear and that the basics are in place. Then you can, of course, release the lockdowns. You can encourage movement because you know what you're doing. And it is important to continue testing because that's the only way you know where the virus is. We're dealing, frankly, with an enemy. It's an unseen enemy, and we need to do everything possible not to let the enemy actually defeat us. And it defeats us if we don't take it seriously.
I could see you won't be drawn on specific countries. I can understand why. But the World Health Organization did single out the United Kingdom. The World Health Organization spokesperson had this to say about Britain.
You've done well. You've really brought down your numbers. I mean, the UK has brought a very difficult outbreak right down. Very good news in the last couple of days about the limitation in cases and in far fewer people dying. So now is the moment to celebrate that by being super careful.
Yes.
But I mean, why congratulate a country that has the highest per capita death rate of any nation apart from Belgium?
Well, I mean, I have to be clear with you and with everybody. When we're in the World Health Organization, we have to operate within the space that governments give us. And most of the time, governments are really prepared to accept our advice, but occasionally they really don't like it. So we tend always to look for the positive. But I think what Dr. Harris was doing, and it was pretty clear to me when I listened to her remarks, actually, as she said them, is she's saying, look, don't behave as though the virus has gone away. Don't go out and celebrate as though suddenly you've got out of some kind of detention. This is a very different situation. The virus is still here. Please go on respecting it. And I think that is the instruction that we should be giving to everybody. We're not allowed to give instructions because we operate through a consent mechanism. So what we've got to be able to say to everybody is, please take it seriously. We have to go on beseeching them because that is the way in which we have to work. But it is a very, very strong beseeching request from people like me. Take this virus seriously.
Well, should you believe that the wearing of masks should be compulsory?
I wear a mask when I'm in public places. I wear a mask for two reasons. Firstly, if I've got the virus, I want to make sure I'm not passing it on to other people. And if I'm in a situation where somebody might have the virus, I want to try to reduce my risk of getting it. I'm 70 and I take it very, very seriously. I also would practice physical distancing. I also look after older people and people who are frail and make sure they're not at risk. I do this because I know my behavior has a huge impact on the well-being of other people. Often the people who are most at risk are those who don't have the space and the time and the opportunity to protect themselves. They're low paid. They're in jobs where they have to service. So I think also wearing a mask is an important sign of respect to others whose risks are greater than mine. So I really encourage everybody to wear it. And personally, I believe that in particular settings like public transport, it ought to be compulsory.
And last question, I mean, we've been speaking pretty regularly since the beginning of this pandemic. What is your frame of mind personally now? Are you more hopeful than you were a few months ago? Less hopeful? Why or why not? When you look at the next few months, what is your frame of mind, your outlook?
On my desk, I have a graph that shows numbers of reported COVID cases and deaths every day. And I study it really carefully, even though I know that there are many more cases than are in my graph. I am very disturbed that there is now an acceleration of reported COVID around the world, particularly in poor countries. I'm really worried about what this is going to do for the economies of poor communities and poor countries in the months to come, because the virus isn't going to go away.